Welcome to Modern Business Life. Real conversations with the leaders, operators, and innovators shaping the way business gets done. No fluff, no filter. Just the stuff you wish people weren't scared to say out loud. Interested in being a guest? Email us at guest@modernbusiness.life. On with the pod.
Today's guest has one of the more unusual paths to enterprise sales leadership that I've come across. He started his career in behavioral science as chief sales officer at Irrational Labs. From there, he moved through digital engineering, process mining, and now leads sales at JDATSG, a managed operations partner for Fortune 500 companies that sits at the intersection of human expertise and AI-enabled workflows. AI is top of mind for everybody, and so he's going to give us a lot of insight into what he's actually hearing in the enterprise between we can build it ourselves over the weekend and hey, we need real professionals to do this. His thesis, and he says it consistently and clearly, is that deploying AI is no longer the hard problem. Designing how your team actually works around it is. He's the SVP of Sales at JDATSG, as I said, holds a finance BBA from UW-Foster, and he has a sharper point of view on enterprise AI adoption than most people twice his seniority. Robbie Taylor, welcome to the pod.
Colin, thanks for having me.
Yeah, you bet. So look, let's just dive right into it. I'm interested to hear when you walk into a room in the enterprise, what is the first signal that you get from the prospect or from the potential customer where you're like, they get it. They understand the path that we're about to be on versus those that are somewhat resistant to having a third party come in and tell them how to implement new processes and AI into the business.
Yeah, I think the biggest one that I'll answer from the opposite is when I realize they don't get it is when you come in and people are immediately being like, yeah, we're cutting headcount across the board everywhere and AI is going to replace everyone. So like, how quickly can we do this? And like, what's that going to look like, right? I think I transitioned out of the pure tech world into the human services side of tech for the reason in the AI world that I believe humans are going to become more and more important, not less important, right? And I think that we're seeing this more and more in this AI evolution, where the companies that are succeeding are not just giving everyone access to Claude and saying like, go wild, or like, hey, we don't need a CRM anymore. We vibe coded our CRM last night and now we just turned off our SaaS platform, right? Like these are all things that in theory, certain aspects of this functionality can be done. But the foundation setting, the role setting, the change management, the governance structure, the accountability structures, all of these kind of things are massively important. There's a good anecdote I use a lot for this. Chevron deployed a bunch of agentic AIs for sales, and someone online was able to talk an agent into selling them a car for $1. And then when Chevron had like a meeting about this, like how the hell did we just sell a car for $1? There was no one that could actually raise their hand and say like, that's on me. Like, sorry about that, right? Like the IT team that built the products and maybe system integrators that came in and helped set it up were like, hey, it was functioning. All the guardrails that we set up were accurate, et cetera. And then the sales team is like, we don't know how these agents work. Like, I don't know how to train them. I don't know how to stop them if they're doing something wrong. And so there was this gap of accountability where something was built and it was built correctly. And then there was a team that runs sales that said, these are the rules it should have. But as we know within AI, it's not like a SaaS platform where historically you'd build it, IT would build it, they'd hand it to a functional team and they'd run it. There's this gap in between now where something gets built, but the people that are functionally overseeing and running it need to actually understand how it works, how to train it, how to manage it, how to support it long-term. And that gap we're seeing a lot. So when it comes to what do people understand or are people ready to move forward into this space, to me, it's thinking about what's the human impact of this and how do we get the most value out of the technology by thinking about the human side and the human, guardrails and structure around the AI deployment itself.
Okay, so let me ask, because you also have said or written that the AI team and the ops team often aren't working together. And you just gave a great example of that. Whose fault, who's responsible for fixing it? Is that a new role? Is that part of the planning process where a third party like you all comes in and says, hey, it's not enough to have guardrails and QA, QC. You actually need this new thing. Like at the end of it, like if one hand doesn't know what the other hand is doing and everyone has the best of intentions, how do you actually remediate a serious problem like selling somebody a car for $1?
Yeah, so At lack of giving a sales pitch myself, I think that what you do really need is some type of center of excellence or governance layer that sits between the two, right? So you're still going to have your technical engineers and devs and people that are building the AI itself, as much as people want to say like anyone can just vibe code this. If you're talking about an enterprise scale, I don't think we should be trusting vibe coders to build enterprise scale tools at this point. And then I don't think we should also be making the functional parts of the business, whether that be operations, sales, you name which department, really having to say, hey, you're an expert and you've built your career and your depth of knowledge, the reason you're in this role because you're an expert at the function that you run or support. Now also layer on a high depth of not just working with agentic AI, but how the back end of agentic AI works and how to train it. So to us, how we go to market is you actually need a central governance layer in between there, what we call a center of excellence in between. So this is people that have functional expertise. So like, let's just use an example in a bank and a loan department, right? That they're using agentic AI to support loan developments and loan approval process. You need someone that understands how the loan approval process works. But then on the other side, they need to have a technical understanding of how agents are built, how they're trained, how you set up guardrails, how you identify hallucinations, and how you make sure you stop things like selling a car for $1 or giving a loan to someone that absolutely shouldn't or that's fraudulent, right? So having the people that sit in between, and it's their job to oversee the agents full time, not the agent's oversight is just a part-time, right? We need to start thinking about agents as people that need to be managed. And so for us, that's a net new role that needs to oversee and manage these agents that has dotted lines to both the technical side of the house and the functional operational side of the house.
So that's interesting about agents being like people that need to be managed, because I think there's a idea, or maybe you would argue it's a misconception, that because the agent has a defined set of tasks, activities in a linear fashion, or whatever, that it's a set it and forget it, that you can check the work and make sure it's still pointed in the right direction. But by and large, it's going to keep repeating the task correctly every time. Is that the right way to think about agents, that they have to be managed in the sense that you just want to make sure they stay on track? Or is there an evolution as the work continues, as the work evolves and changes, that the agent also needs to be able to evolve and change?
Yeah, so I think it's a massive misstep if you think it's a set it and forget it. That's how I think SaaS worked, right? That's not how AI can work. Agents, we're seeing things in the news every day about OpenAI. Just like 2 days ago said, like, our bots hacked another company and we couldn't stop them, right? So like, if you're seeing things like this from the providers themselves of the AI, to think that you at an enterprise can just set an agent and forget it is a huge, mistake. And to me also, it's about how do you continue to make them better, just like you would an employee. These agents can continue to learn and improve. As your business changes over time, the agent should be doing different tasks and should be trained in a different way. And so these things do need to be looked at differently. When I say manage, I mean, there's good news, right? You can have a much larger scale of one individual managing a team of agents. They can be managing, tens to hundreds of agents at one given time, given if they have the right skill set in place. So you don't need to do performance reviews with your agents. You don't need to talk about, their personal problems at home and take them out for lunch to make them feel good, right? So there's less time spent on management, but that management is more understanding how they work, understanding the tasks that they're doing, but then understand how the business is evolving and how do you continue to train the agents to stay at pace with the evolution of your business. We all know enterprise businesses are constantly evolving, so the agents have to evolve with them. So you can't set it and forget it in my eyes.
Yeah. So not just with the enterprise, I actually think quite a bit about all customers, and so you could speak broadly or speak to your specific experience, but like, what are people actually buying? Because I have this idea, this Venn diagram in my head where there's this intersection of, we want growth and profitability. AI is going to help with that. We want efficiency. We're going to reduce headcount. We're going to get more productivity. AI is going to help with that. And I don't really care. It's just my board and the investors are all over me to become an AI-enabled business. And so that's what I'm buying. Like, what do you perceive people are buying? And candidly, like, what are you selling them? Like, are you selling them what they want? Or are you saying, no, slow down, man. Like, what you actually need, if you do this and this and this, you'll get the growth that satisfies the efficiency. Like, what are people actually wanting to buy out there?
Yeah. So most people are buying because of the last thing you said. The board and the executives are telling us we need a bunch of AI. So like, we're doing it. Then the second step is people are trying to buy efficiency, right? Like, hey, this is going to make us way more efficient. And for anyone, like I'm sure you are, like a power user with AI, like I can do way more in a given day than I used to be able to. That's for sure. But that's even in my personal life, in side tasks, whatever it may be, as well as in my day job. Um, but you can't trust that everyone in the ecosystem at your company, whether you're a giant enterprise or a startup, just giving them licenses to things is going to create efficiency immediately, right? Like MIT came out with a study. This is like 9 months old now, so in AI world, it's like ancient. But that said 95% of AI pilots are realizing zero ROI, right? So people are not actually making the dollars back on it yet, and that's not because the technology is not capable. Like I think we would all agree that AI technology is very powerful and very capable of making an individual and a business more efficient. But our hypothesis and thesis is here, and I've seen this throughout my experience in this, these few years of AI really becoming what it is today. It's about how do you have the strategy in place when you deploy it? How do you have the role types around it to make it actually efficient? How do you have the tracking in place to make sure you know what metrics you're trying to move and how they're moving? And if they're not moving well, what's causing that? So setting this up in a very structured way and trying to understand throughout the daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, what the process looks like as you deploy and what the impact of that deployment is what people are largely missing right now. People are just throwing tools at a problem and assuming it'll solve it. So I was just at a large CCW. It's the largest customer experience conference globally in Vegas. And there was 250 booths. I would say about 200 of them all had something like the same tagline behind them: agentic AI for the enterprise. Everyone said the same thing, right? And so I took our booth and I wrote on a whiteboard piece of paper, in just like with a marker, "We are not an agentic AI company. Talk to us," right? And everyone like flooded to want to talk to us because they're seeing so many people tell them the same story that like I wrote on a piece of paper and everyone loved it, right? And the reason was, I'm like, everyone here can kind of do the same thing and their technology is all good. But like half of them aren't going to exist in 2 years, not because the technology isn't good. It's because they haven't been giving their customers the value they need. And that's because the human input, the human side is not being taken into account. And that's why companies like ours exist.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. When I was in web hosting, it was pretty common to think like everybody's hardware was generally the same. It's all HP blade servers and Dell servers. This is back before cloud. And what we would talk about is like you win the business the first time the customer has a problem, because that's when they decide if they're going to stay or not, right? Like that, especially like shared hosting, $5 hosting. There's 1,000 companies doing that. What happens when the shit hits the fan and they actually need help? That's when you actually win the deal. It's interesting you brought that up about the conference, because something that's near and dear to my heart is actually looking at the market, looking at competitors, and using that to inform the conversation and the pitch. Not just letting the customer tell you what they need, but also like reading G2 reviews to see what customers like them are saying about competitors, are saying about problems, so you can speak to them in their own language. You talking about changing your message at a conference to stand out, talking about walking in and dealing with customers who say, "Oh, we're going to replace all the people." Like, how much or how little time and attention do you spend thinking about what other people are doing, including your potential customers, versus walking in and saying like, "Hey, we have great conviction that this is the right path, and if you join us on the path the way we do things, you're going to win"?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. I think that especially as a sales professional, you need to have your ear to the market at all times and understand what people are saying. I think the hard part in today's day and age is the tool we're talking about, AI, is also making everyone put out so much content and tell so many stories that are all so amazing that they didn't even write themselves. And like the validity of them, I question a lot. So to me, going to industry standard publications, like I just referenced an MIT study, for example, those are the places I like to go to say like, here's a known, reputable, less than like an enterprise, more educational spaces or your Gartners of the world, places that are putting out market-wide research and saying, here's what we're seeing. I'm finding to resonate much more than down to the ground. Now, referencing case studies of just conversations, I have a few anecdotes from conversations I've had with people that I use all the time. I probably won't say them here in public, like where we're going to put this out on a podcast, but like people that are just making massive mistakes and they just don't realize it yet. But I think keeping an ear out on how the industries are moving and how technology adoption is moving and how people are like the problems that they're seeing is what I'm really trying to focus on much more, because to be honest, everyone's kind of at the same place. Like every board, we just had our quarterly leadership team meeting. We all sat there at the end. We're like, what percentage of companies are sitting down having this exact same conversation? Like, how do we get efficiency out of AI? How do we deploy this? Like, what roles do we need? Like, all these questions. I think that every company worth its weight right now is having these conversations. So to me, it's like, if everyone's having them, how do we position ourselves to help them answer even parts of those questions? And we'll be really successful.
Yeah. So look, we're coming up against, I've got 2 questions left for you. These are more towards the sales bent. The first one is individual, and the second one is sort of larger. I work with a lot of salespeople who have a career path, and they're like, I want to be an AE, I want to work in enterprise, I want to work in the newest tech. And right now, as you said, the newest tech is like AI. What's a piece of advice you would give, or something maybe you wish you knew 15, 20 years ago, that you would give to somebody who's earlier in their journey than you are, that will make the journey not easier, but perhaps a little bit straighter of a path for them? One piece of advice.
Yeah. So I think it's a good question. So like I've looked at this AI evolution and tried to look back and say, as I was coming up in my career and I look at people that were, at mature portions of their career or coming up in their career during the .com boom, I'm like, how did you not get rich? Like, it seems like it was so easy. Like everyone was making all this money. Like, and I look at the AI one and be like, I better not look back 10, 15 years from now and be like, whoa, I missed it. Like, how did I not, like, it was a gold mine and I missed it. Right. So to me, trying to take a step back, look at the technology evolution, big picture, wanting to be an AI, that's cool, but don't go bet on one verticalized small platform that's trying to do the same thing that 50 other companies are trying to do. Try to figure out what is the like core value that AI is providing to the market and place a bet there, right? Like how do you ride the wave of a technology innovation that you're not gambling? You're not choosing the next like hot.com that there's 5 other .coms that are trying to do the same thing and the same thing in AI. How do you get to like be the pick and shovel provider? How do you work for the companies that are actually going to be providing the value that this evolution is creating, and bet your career on that? To me, I went completely counter. I went onto the human services side when everyone's saying humans are going away. But to me, I felt strongly that this AI evolution is going to create a huge change in how humans work. And so that was my bet. And there's plenty of others within this AI evolution I think people can make. But I would challenge people to think bigger than just, I want to be an AI, and think about what the value AI is providing and how you can, work for a company and build a skill set that actually solidifies yourself within this evolution, not just betting on a horse and hoping it hits.
Yeah. Well, first off, your comment about how did you not get rich in the .com boom, like, I feel seen. So thanks for that, because that's exactly my origin story. My origin story is how to not get rich during the .com boom. Last question I've got for you, and you've sort of addressed this a little, and I know we're up against it, so maybe just a quick one. Like, what does sales look like in 2 years? When you think about AI, when you think about the tools, what does sales look like in the next 2 years?
So I'm seeing a huge shift back to in-person, which I think is really interesting. Conferences are back. Everyone's wanting to be at conferences. The conference circuit is hot right now. For me to close enterprise deals, I'm flying and meeting people and shaking hands. I'm not doing most of this virtually. There's calls in between, and there's Teams and Zoom calls and all this kind of stuff. But I do think as people can put out so much messaging, so much content, AI can do all of these things for you. Just getting in people's inboxes and posting stuff on LinkedIn, it's hard to cut through that noise. So to me, the BDR and SDR world is going to change a lot. That's for sure. The enterprise account exec world, I don't think is changing that much. Maybe you can have more accounts than you used to, but I really think that we're going to be expected to know a lot more coming into calls. You're not going to be allowed to come in and ask the same 50 discovery questions you used to. We have tools at our hands that enable us to do so much more now. So I think the expectation is when people get on the phone and talk to you or meet you in person, you're going to be at a higher caliber than you used to be. But I don't think that the number of sellers is really shrinking. I do think the big unknown for me is, how are people going to cut their teeth in the sales world? The BDR, SDR to SMB to mid-market to AE to enterprise, like that path is going to evolve. I don't want to say I have a crystal ball and know exactly how it's going to look. But I think that that's the biggest unknown for me. How do the young folks learn on the job? But as you progress into account management, account executives, enterprise, all this stuff, I think that people are going to be getting in person, shaking hands and meeting people as much or more than they ever have. So that's my hypothesis.
Got it. Listen, Robbie, thank you for being here on the pod today. Lots of insights and things about AI and the AI market that we actually don't talk about really nearly enough here. So appreciate it again. Everybody, that's Robbie Taylor, SVP of Sales at JDATSG. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me.